getting the crew home, and then we can start thinking about celebrating.
Eric, go ahead.
Eric Berger, Ars Technica again. Probably for Amit, just about the pressurization valves. I think we're all kind of asking questions. You know, we're non-technical people mostly here in the room, and so we're just trying to understand sort of the seriousness. I think we all understand that this is not a constraint or an issue at all for this mission. You talked about how Artemis III, you don't need the performance, but you do for Artemis IV. You know, when I hear about propulsion valves, I get a little nervous because it's an important part of the system, and they often are issues with them. And so just help us understand, like, is this like a review on the scale of the heat shield after Artemis I, or do you think it's like a significantly less serious problem to address? Just kind of help us understand the magnitude.
That's fair. It is not. It's not. You know, there are a lot of options for how to take care of this problem. I think if anything, I'd characterize it as a production redesign risk for the Artemis IV mission, which I think we can get in front of, and which is why we put so much attention on it during the mission, to make sure what we're seeing, because the sizes of the leaks we've seen in the past were not this large after the burn. And so if we know that this is, no kidding, hey, a different piece of data that's outside the range of our current understanding, that pushes us more quickly into, hey, let's get the redesign started now so we avoid the production risk. It's not a safety of flight, safety of crew, must work function like the heat shield investigation sent us down. And it's going to take work to get it right, but it's not of that magnitude.
Okay, we'll take our last question from Marcia. Go ahead.
Marcia Dunn, Associated Press. I wanted to clarify that the immediate families will be watching for mission control for entry and splashdown. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
And they'll be reunited when the crew gets back to Houston?
Yeah, whenever the team that supports them makes sense.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Our special coverage of Artemis II splashdown begins tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Central Time, ahead of splashdown at 7:07 p.m. Central Time. We look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow. Thanks for joining.
Houston Integrity, is there anything we can do to help your efficiency here? We can execute some steps from 2.2.1.
Hey, Reed, we are just a couple of commands away from getting everything squared away for you.
Roger that. Thank you.
Integrity Houston, for PCD connectivity, we have not seen PCD2 reconnected to the network. If you can please check PCD2.
Okay, we will get on that. And for a crew that has asked for only lower cabin fan speeds this entire mission, we are very happy to have what we have right now. Thank you.
We see PCD2 on the network and silver linings.
Okay, great. Thanks.
This is Mission Control, Houston. 7 days, 21 hours, 52 minutes into the flight of Integrity on the Artemis II mission. Aboard the vehicle, the 4 crew members, Commander Reed Wiseman, Pilot Victor Glover, and mission specialists Christina Cook and Jeremy Hansen are busy stowing the crew cabin in preparation for tomorrow's return to Earth and breaking out the flight data file for a bit of study on all the procedures and timeline activities that will accompany their return to Earth for a splashdown in the Pacific at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Pacific Time on Friday night. While we were in the mission's status briefing about 18 minutes ago, there was a smoke alarm that was enunciated on board, ultimately attributed to the crew beginning to pack up items in the crew cabin. It is believed that all that happened was the stirring up of some dust that the sensitive smoke detectors in the crew cabin picked up on, and in the conservative calibration that those sensors are placed in, enunciated that alarm. There is no smoke, there's no issue with the vehicle, but we thought that we would play for you.
Integrity Houston for cabin config.
Go ahead.
A probably wrong subject line there, but while we try to cool off the cabin temperature a bit, we have elected to turn off OFF, the cabin leak detection, just to avoid any further enunciations there. And once things stabilized, we will re-enable it, and we'll let you know when that's the case. Your edge key still works.
Okay, copy that.
Once again, while we were in the mission status briefing and the crew was beginning to tidy up the crew cabin, they apparently kicked up some dust, which triggered smoke detection, annunciation in the cabin, a smoke alarm, if you will. There was no smoke. There was no indication of any anomalous behavior on any of the environmental control systems on board Integrity, but we wanted to play for you the clip of the exchange between Commander Reed Wiseman and spacecraft communicator Jackie Mahaffey during that 3-minute or so period of time in which we were evaluating the systems on board Integrity. Here's the clip.
Integrity Houston, we copy your call and we see the messages. We'll sync up when you're ready.
We are ready.
Okay, Reed, we'll take a quick report from your perspective on what you heard and saw and your conclusion on NAMA.
Okay, we're powering up the AGA right now. I'll let you know when it is up. Just from our perspective inside the cabin, we are 100% nominal operations. We are just gathering to start studying entry prep. Do you see any indications on the ground?
Yeah, Reed, we did see a large spike in the smoke detector data. However, it does appear to be normalizing. It does look a little different than the signatures that we've seen previously during the
cabin entry config, we are kicking up a fair amount of particulate. I wouldn't say there's a lot of dust in here, but I'm just looking around and there's a fair amount in here. So if it was simply a smoke detector detection, I think we are good. We did not manually initiate that.
Understand all, and we'll stand by when you have an AGA reading. We'll take it.
I know we need to wait 5 minutes, but right now all indications are off scale low. CO2 is 3.2, O2 is 21.3, temperature is 76.7, and we have a bit alpha of 16, a bit bravo of 0, and a cabin pressure of 14.8.
We copy all, and we're looking into the bit.
Houston Integrity, what is the smoke detector's nominal voltage?
Checking. Integrity for the smoke detector, nominal voltage is around 1.2. We are seeing it hover at 1.2 or just above it.
Thank you for that.
Houston, we'll give you a minute to chew on the data, but our recommendation on board is for you to reconfigure for nominal operations.
And again, that was a replay of a clip of the exchange between spacecraft communicator Jackie Mahaffey here in Mission Control, part of the entry flight control team, and Commander Reed Wiseman on board Integrity. Just to recap briefly, at about 3:10 p.m., about 24 minutes ago, there was an enunciation of a smoke detector alarm on board Integrity, but all of the cabin environmental readings checked out to be normal. It is believed that this was the result of some dust that was kicked up. This happens frequently on the International Space Station, by the way. But the bottom line is no harm, no foul. Everything is in order on board Integrity. All of the systems are in great shape, and the crew is pressing ahead with stowage of the cabin and review of their flight data file. One note from the mission status briefing that was concluded, Flight Dynamics has provided to us the total distance traveled between launch and splashdown for Integrity that lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center, Pad 39B, back on Monday. It is calculated by Flight Dynamics that the total distance traveled for the Artemis II mission from launch to splashdown will be 694,481 miles. 694,481 miles. There's your official distance. And that includes the high Earth orbit that Integrity flew in for the first 24 hours of the flight prior to the translunar injection that sent the 4 astronauts off toward the moon and its lunar flyby earlier this week. The crew is preparing to move into a conference with Flight Director Rick Henfling to discuss all of the burns that remain on the docket for this flight and the procedures and all of the review of those procedures for entry and splashdown off the coast of California. This is Mission Control Houston here in the control room as we take a look at this great view of the Earth, growing larger in the field of view from one of the solar array wing cameras on Integrity. Shows the Earth. That's the port of call for Integrity for its splashdown.
Integrity Houston for email. Everything is synced up. You are go to open email. And let us know if and when would be a good time to come on board with the HHP cam.
We are definitely feeling a little bit behind on the timeline, so let us get back on step and we'll get that stuff going.
No worries, we copy.
And Reed Wiseman inviting us to come on board to watch the crew at work on this final full day of activities for the Artemis II astronauts. Will be coming on board shortly. Once again, the view of the Earth that you saw a moment ago that will punch out again right there. We're 3 hours and 25 minutes away from reaching the halfway point on the journey home from the moon. Again, splashdown is scheduled. Splashdown is scheduled at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Pacific Time tomorrow. Once the crew completes its briefing with Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling to review all of the procedures associated with the entry and splashdown in the Pacific tomorrow, the Flight Dynamics Officer will provide the latest numbers and what's known as an entry pad. This is basically a list of numbers that show the time of the burns remaining, particularly the RTC-3, or Return Trajectory Correction number 3 burn, that will take place early tomorrow afternoon, the final major maneuver to fine-tune the orientation of Integrity on its path to enter the Earth's atmosphere with precision to minimize peak heating on the vehicle and to bring it into the corridor that will result in a splashdown close to the recovery ship, the USS John P. Murtha. There is a second return trajectory correction burn that's scheduled this evening at 9:53 p.m. Central Time. That is currently planned to be about an 8-second firing of the reaction control system thrusters with a resulting change in velocity of about 4.2 feet per second, once again fine-tuning Integrity's path toward the entry corridor, essentially a cone across the Pacific from southwest to northeast that is about 475 miles wide, 475 nautical miles wide. If you think of the beginning of entry interface, go 1,300 miles down track toward the coast of California. That is the initiation of the zone, the splashdown zone that we would like to enter in. We would prefer to enter into a zone that is as far downrange as 1,775 nautical miles, which is much closer to the coastline of California and much closer to where the recovery team will be waiting to begin the process of ensuring that the vehicle is not in any anomalous situation, no leaking of toxic gases, and to begin the process of erecting a large raft alongside of the vehicle called the front porch, in which the crew will be extracted and will spend a few minutes getting acclimated to the sensation of gravity for the first time in 9 days before they are hoisted in sequential fashion up to a pair of Navy helicopters to fly them back to the deck of the USS John Murtha, where they will go into medical bay for initial medical evaluations. The latest information that we have received from the Murtha shows the order of extraction of the crew from the vehicle to be in this order. Christina Cook will be extracted first, followed by Victor Glover, then Jeremy Hansen, and the commander, Reed Wiseman, will be last out of his ship. They'll all be in that front porch, the large inflatable raft, buttressed up alongside the hatchway to integrity, before they are hoisted one by one into the helicopters in alternating fashion. Christina Cook first up to helicopter number 1, Jeremy Hansen next to helicopter number 2, Victor Glover, third in line, will be hoisted to helicopter number 1 to join Cook, and Reed Wiseman last to be hoisted to helicopter number 2 to join Hansen for the short ride back to the deck of the Murtha. There have been a lot of questions regarding peak velocity and G-forces on the crew. We can tell you that the current prediction by Flight Dynamics indicates that the peak velocity for integrity as it barrels back into the Earth's atmosphere will be just after we begin a 6-minute blackout in communications, which I'll explain again just a moment or two from now. We expect the speed to be about Mach 32, which equates to about 23,839 miles an hour. Now that could vary a bit based on trajectory, angle of attack, and other factors, but we expect the peak velocity to be about 32 times the speed of sound. The G-forces on the crew expected to be up to about 3.9 Gs, very much in limits to what you would see for a returning Soyuz or Dragon crew, even though the velocity entering the Earth's atmosphere is much higher for integrity because of the distance that it is traveling on its way back from the moon. We'll run down all of the key times of entry events a short time from now, but for now, everything is going very well on board. The crew preparing to enter into a conference with Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling to discuss all of the particulars regarding procedures for tomorrow's homecoming to bring to an end this historic lunar flyby. At a mission elapsed time of 7 days, 22 hours, 12 minutes, 24 seconds into the flight of integrity, this is Mission Control Houston.
Integrity Houston for a follow-up. The false fire cleanup is complete, and your leak detection is re-enabled.
Outstanding, Jackie. Thank you very much. Feeling good on here.
Integrity Houston for state vector uplink.
Go ahead.
The pre-burn state vector has been uplinked. This means that your PCL slot 3 is no longer valid. Your PCL pointer is now pointing to your nominal slot 4.
Outstanding. It's great news, Jackie. Thank you. And we are going to head over to 2 for the conference.
We are ready. We'll meet you there.
This is Mission Control Houston. 7 days, 22 hours, 29 minutes into the flight of Integrity on the Artemis II mission. We're about 3 hours away from Integrity reaching the halfway mark between the Moon and the Earth following its flyby of the lunar surface. Integrity systems in excellent shape. The crew currently in a conference with Flight Director Rick Henfling to review entry and splashdown procedures and elements of their flight data file, along with the rest of the flight plan for the remainder of the mission. Next up in major activity will be the brief firing of reaction control system thrusters 5 hours and 48 minutes from now in the RTC-2 burn. That's the return trajectory correction number 2 burn. that will further fine-tune the path of integrity as it begins to approach the Earth's atmosphere, that it will reach tomorrow afternoon for its entry back to Earth, a high-speed entry that we'll get into with more particulars here in a minute. The crew tomorrow on entry day will wake up at 10:35 a.m. Central Time to begin their final day in space. They'll begin to configure the crew cabin, completing all of the stowage of items that they no longer will need. They have already begun that task. This is basically cleanup day today. They'll be configuring the cabin for entry and preparing their launch and entry suits. There is another return trajectory correction burn that is scheduled at 1:53 p.m. Central Time on Friday. That's the final big burn that will clean up and tweak any further trajectory maneuvers to make sure that integrity is moving in the correct orientation with the right angle of attack as it enters the corridor, a cone if you will, across the Pacific Ocean for arrival at the splashdown site off the coast of San Diego. Although we are broadcasting 24/7 on the YouTube channel, continuous coverage all the way through the time the crew is on the recovery ship tomorrow evening, NASA Plus coverage will join in simulcasting all of this at 5:30 p.m. Central Time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday afternoon and evening. At 6:15 p.m. Central Time on Friday, we'll hand over communications links from the Deep Space Network to the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite System. Just 18 minutes later, at 6:33 p.m. Central Time on Friday, the crew module will separate from the European service module. And just 4 minutes later, at 6:37 p.m. Central Time, the crew module thrusters will fire for about 18 seconds to nudge the aft end of the vehicle upward, basically reorienting the vehicle for the most favorable angle of attack as it enters the Earth's atmosphere. In rapid fire succession at that point, at 6:53 p.m. Central Time, the vehicle and its 4 astronauts will enter the Earth's atmosphere at an altitude of 400,000 feet, traveling 34,882 feet per second. Range to touchdown, 1,701 nautical miles. Now, just 24 seconds after entry interface, heat will begin to build up around the vehicle, raising the temperature around the vehicle to about 4,000 to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and we will enter about a 6-minute blackout period at 6:53 and 54 seconds p.m. Central Time. This is expected. It is not unusual. We will have a loss of data and a loss of voice from the crew for about a 6-minute period because of the ionization, the plasma buildup around the vehicle as the heat shield repels the heat from the velocity of entry. During that blackout period and the period of peak heating, the G-forces on the crew will build to about 3.9 Gs, which is well within the limits planned for this mission. Integrity will conduct 2 role reversals, one to the left, one to the right during this period of time, actually the first pair of 5 such role reversals that will be commanded by computer to bleed off excess speed as the vehicle descends into the thicker regions, the denser regions of the Earth's atmosphere. We will emerge from that blackout period at 6:59 and 56 seconds p.m. Central Time. And the blackout period ending should result in a resumption of communications with the crew. We'll be calling them to make sure that they can hear us, and we'll be waiting for their response. And at that point, we'll be just 7 minutes away from splashdown. The chute deployment sequence will occur in several stages. There are a total of 11 parachutes for Orion to slow its speed from a peak velocity of about 32 times the speed of sound to a splashdown velocity of just 19 miles an hour in a 14-minute period. So it's a pretty quick deceleration that will be felt by the crew on board Integrity. First up will be the deployment of 3 forward bay cover parachutes to pull the forward bay cover. That's essentially the top cover on the vehicle that must be pulled away from the rest of Integrity to ensure the deployment of the rest of the parachute system. So 3 forward bay cover parachutes will be deployed at 7:03 and 22 seconds p.m. Central Time. Each one of these chutes is 7 feet in diameter, weighing about 8 pounds apiece, 100% Kevlar. Those chutes are deployed at an altitude of about 24,000 feet when the vehicle is traveling at about 350 miles an hour. That'll be followed in quick succession by the deployment of 2 drogue chutes, and you'll hear all of this in real time. 2 drogue chutes will be deployed to stabilize the crew module during descent, establishing the proper conditions for the main parachute deployment that will follow imminently. The drogue chutes will deploy at 7:03 and 23 seconds p.m. Central Time, while the vehicle is traveling now just 473 feet per second. So you can see how quickly the descent rate will decelerate, and we'll be calling out altitude and rate of descent all the way through Integrity's transit across the Pacific Ocean. The main chute deployment following 3 pilot parachutes that are used to lift and deploy the main parachutes from the crew module forward bay. That's followed finally by main parachute deploy. That's the key thing we're looking for. These 3 large parachutes that will deploy at 7:04 and 44 seconds p.m. Central Time at an altitude of about 5,400 feet above the ocean. And at this point, Integrity will be traveling just 198 feet per second. The main parachutes, the 3 large orange and white parachutes that you'll be seeing, are 116 feet in diameter. They weigh 310 pounds apiece. Each parachute is about 265 feet long. You'll see them reef in that typical manner that you see parachute deployments for a spacecraft that is landing on land in the case of Russian Soyuz vehicles, or in the case of Dragons landing in the Gulf or off the coast of California. So 11 parachutes will be employed during the descent of Integrity for its splashdown, and the current time that we have from Flight Dynamics for splashdown on Friday night is 7:07 and 6 seconds p.m. Central Time, 5:07 and 6 seconds p.m. Pacific Time, which is about 2.5 hours before sunset out in the Pacific. Once Integrity splashes down in the Pacific, Navy helicopters and fast boats will be deployed to arrive by the capsule as quickly as possible. Here in Mission Control, we'll be first conducting the power down of the electrical systems and ensuring that no toxic gases are emanating from Integrity. The one thing, of course, we'll be looking for at splashdown is the orientation of the vehicle. If it's stable 1, we'll know, and that means it is upright. If it's stable 2, it will be upside down, but the system known as CMOOS by its acronym, the Crew Module Uprighting System, which consists of 5 large inflatable airbags at the top of the spacecraft, will be inflated nonetheless, whether it's stable 1 or stable 2, through helium that will maintain a stable upright orientation for Integrity to allow the start of the recovery operations. It is anticipated that it will take about 45 minutes to an hour to extract the crew from the vehicle. The extraction process, led by Navy divers and flight surgeons, will have Christina Cook exiting the vehicle first, followed by Victor Glover, followed by Jeremy Hansen, and the commander, Reed Wiseman, will be last off the ship. Once in the large inflatable raft that will be erected and buttressed up alongside the spacecraft, it's called the front porch. The crew will make sure that they are getting their Earth legs back after 9 days of weightlessness, and one by one they'll be fitted with harnesses to hoist them up to 2 hovering Navy helicopters. Christina Cook will be first up into helicopter number 1, followed by Jeremy Hansen into helicopter number 2. Victor Glover is third up in helicopter number 1. He will join Christina Cook, and Reed Wiseman will be last, going up into helicopter 2 to join Jeremy Hansen for a short flight back to the deck of the USS John Murtha, which is the recovery ship. Once the crew is on board, they'll be taken into the medical bay for more comprehensive medical exams, and will spend some time aboard the ship before they're helicoptered off the ship back to San Diego, and ultimately to board a NASA plane to fly back to the Johnson Space Center. So that, once again, is a rundown of all of the key times that we have at this point. Any updates, of course, we'll bring them along to you. But the crew currently in the midst of a review of entry and splashdown procedures with the entry team here in Mission Control. They'll be moving into a midday meal a short time from now. And once again, the next major event is going to be the return trajectory correction burn number 2 that is on tap for this evening, with the burn scheduled at 9:53 p.m. Central Time tonight, an 8-second firing of the reaction control system jets to tweak and fine-tune the path of Integrity back to Earth. About 2 hours and 45 minutes from now, the vehicle will pass the midway point of the return trip home from the moon that saw a fly around of the moon and human eyes casting a gaze and capturing historic photos of areas of the moon never seen before. So we will continue our nonstop coverage of the flight of Integrity on the Artemis II mission, all the way through the point that the crew will be in the medical bay on the ship tomorrow evening. Once again, splashdown is scheduled off the coast of San Diego, at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Pacific Time on Friday evening.
Houston Integrity, we are back up on 1 after the conference.
We've got you loud and clear.
And we're on board Integrity with our 4 astronauts, Christina Cook on the left, Victor Glover, Commander Reed Wiseman, and Jeremy Hansen of the Canadian Space Agency on the right. The crew is continuing to stow equipment on board. They've concluded a conference with Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling to review procedures for tomorrow's return to Earth. And we'll soon be moving into a midday meal on this day before their homecoming to planet Earth. Integrity systems functioning very well. No issues being worked by the flight control team. No issues that would preclude a nominal entry and splashdown for the crew on Friday. One more note, I think of interest, of course, is the heat shield on Integrity and how it likely will fare during the high-speed return to Earth for Integrity's astronauts on Friday. I went through this a bit earlier today, but I think it's worth repeating. On Artemis I, we flew a trajectory known as a skip entry, which means we performed an initial dip into the Earth's atmosphere to dissipate some energy to basically bleed off excess speed. Then we lofted or skipped out of the atmosphere, then dipped a second and final time into the atmosphere before splashing down in the eastern Pacific Ocean south of San Diego. As part of routine post-flight inspections and video analysis, some areas of mechanical char liberation that were observed, which created a cause for concern for a critical part of that spacecraft. It should be noted that the chemical decomposition of ablative heat shields like the one on Orion is expected. That mechanical liberation of the char is what was unexpected on Artemis I. The chemical decomposition occurs as the heat shield material heats up and decomposes, a process known as pyralization, which generates gas during entry. The generation rate of gas is a function of the temperature of the heat shield material known as avcoat. As those gases are being generated, a layer of char is forming on the surface of the heat shield, and the char is porous. Now, ideally, what you want to have happen is for the gas to escape through the pores in the char layer faster than new gas is generated. On Artemis I, however, we found that the temperature profile experienced by the heat shield was such that this was not happening on areas of the heat shield with less porous avcoat. That resulted in a pressure buildup under the surface of the char layer, and when the pressure got high enough, portions of the char layer liberated from the heat shield. As a result of the post-flight analysis, and by the way, it should be mentioned that by all estimation and all analysis, had a crew been aboard Artemis 1, it would have been safe for them to return. However, this was an off-nominal occurrence. As a result, NASA gathered experts from across the agency and private industry, including establishing an independent review team to investigate that issue. All agreed with one conclusion. For Artemis II, it was agreed to fly a shorter entry trajectory, in other words, a shorter amount of time from entry interface to a splashdown site, to avoid a temperature buildup or a temperature profile conducive to higher rates of gas generation as the aft coat chemically decomposes. Now, for Artemis 3 and beyond, we're going to redesign that manufacturing process to make the aft coat blocks such that we will have material that starts out more porous, allowing more efficient gas dissipation as that char layer forms, which will be a critical feature for longer skip entry trajectories returning from the south pole of the moon, which of course is our destination for lunar landings at the outset. This is Mission Control Houston. You're looking at a wider view of the Artemis Flight Control Room, known as the White Flight Control Room, here in Mission Control at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Down the hall from here, in the International Space Station Flight Control Room that you see in your view, work is continuing as the work day for the Expedition 74 crew has wrapped up. They are, in fact, preparing for the launch of a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station on Saturday morning. That launch scheduled at 6:41 a.m. Central Time, 7:41 a.m. Eastern Time. to send a Northrop Grumman Cygnus cargo craft to the International Space Station packed with food, fuel, supplies, and scientific experiments. NASA Plus coverage of that launch will begin on Saturday morning at 6:20 a.m. Central Time, and again the launch 6:41 a.m. Central, 7:41 a.m. Eastern Time. A launch on Saturday, weather permitting, will result in a robotic capture of the Cygnus craft, which is named the SS Steve Nagel after the late former astronaut. That mechanical capture by the robotic arm under the operation of Jack Hathaway of NASA, backed up by Chris Williams, is scheduled for Monday at 11:50 a.m. Central Time, 12:50 p.m. Eastern Time. That's Monday, with our coverage beginning at 11 a.m. Central Time, high noon Eastern Time on Monday. The Cygnus spacecraft from Northrop Grumman will be installed onto the common berthing mechanism on the Earth-facing side of the Unity module for its delivery run to the Expedition 74 crew. So there's activity in both rooms. The segue from Artemis's return to Earth to resumption of space station operations. The resumption, not actually an accurate word, because the space station operates 24/7, 365. But the focus of attention will shift from Artemis to a certain extent to the active operations aboard the International Space Station. We're about 2.5 hours away from reaching the halfway point on Integrity's journey back to Earth from the moon. And of course, with splashdown looming on the horizon, all of that activity will unfold in rapid fire succession tomorrow afternoon and evening, culminating with a splashdown off the coast of San Diego for Integrity and its 4 astronauts at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Eastern Time. At a mission elapsed time of 7 days, 23 hours into the flight of Integrity, this is Mission Control Houston. And back aboard Integrity, Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen in the middle of your screen, Christina Cook on the right. Reed Wiseman in the background. The crew continuing to stow equipment and get Integrity's cabin ship-shape for tomorrow's return to Earth. Victor Glover just right there on the left side of your screen.
Houston Integrity, stowage, low priority.
Christina, go for stowage.
The keyboard is stowed per the return packing plan. It was deployed.
We copy.
And Jackie, while I have you, we just wanted to express even more our gratitude for these awesome, I'll call them drink notes and drink messages. So many people wrote really cool, heartfelt messages on our bonus drinks, and we are just smiling ear to ear every time we look at one. So thank you so much. It was really fun to find these, and they're really giving us a boost for entry day.
We will make sure that message gets heard by everyone who needs to hear it. Thank you.
This is Mission Control Houston, here in the flight control room. A welcome visitor, Charlie Blackwell Thompson, the Artemis launch director who kicked off this mission with the flawless launch of the Space Launch System and the 4 Integrity astronauts back on April 1st. She's here visiting at the Johnson Space Center, currently talking to her ascent flight director, Judd Freeling, and the entry flight director, Rick Henfling, who will be on tomorrow to preside over Integrity's return to Earth. This is Mission Control Houston at a mission elapsed time of 7 days, 23 hours, 18 minutes into the flight of Integrity. Enjoying the views inside the crew cabin of the vehicle as the crew continues to work through entry preparations, documenting items that they're stowing on board, and reviewing entry procedures in advance of tomorrow's homecoming that will result in a splashdown off the coast of San Diego at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Pacific Time. We are just under 5 hours away from the next engine firing. It's a thruster firing of the reaction control system jets on Integrity. That's the RTC-2 burn, the return trajectory correction number 2 burn. It will be a brief firing of the RCS system to tweak and refine Integrity's orientation as it heads toward an entry corridor tomorrow over the Pacific Ocean and its plunge back into the Earth's atmosphere. Just to refresh folks, Christina Koch and Reed Wiseman returned home from their first missions in a Russian Soyuz vehicle for parachute-assisted landings in Kazakhstan. Victor Glover was on a Crew Dragon mission, so he was in a parachute-assisted splashdown on water. Jeremy Hansen, of course, flying for the first time. So this will all be brand new to him, although this crew has trained for all of this for the better part of 2.5 years.
Integrity Houston, for the burn conference. We are ready when you are.
Okay, Jackie, we're going to take 2 more minutes, and then we'll call you back.
Sounds good.
This is Mission Control Houston, the burn conference referred to by Capcom Jackie Mahaffey here in Mission Control is the discussion that's coming up, brief discussion regarding the elements of the soon-to-be executed return trajectory correction to burn, basically a burn of short duration from the reaction control system on the vehicle that will fine-tune Integrity's path towards its entry corridor over the Pacific Ocean tomorrow.
Jackie, we are ready to start the burn conference.
All right, for our RTC2 burn pad, we think you have V1 UTC of generation day 99, 11:30. Please confirm.
Confirmed.
All right, just a couple of deltas for you. In the guidance solution, delta V tote will be 5.2, T-go of 9 seconds. Delta V components, X negative 3.2, Y negative 0.8, and Z 4.0. How copy?
Copy all.
In the burn execution steps, there is no change, but we wanted to share the comment that if we determine interim targeting is required, we can run that from the ground. You all will be during your PAO event.
Copy.
And then we do have a couple of burn notes for you. The first is a clarification, actually a delta to the first line for tank pressurization. Tank pressurization will not occur during the burn config segment, and the burn will be performed in blowdown.
Makes sense. Copy.
We gave you a go earlier for venting ops, and we do have an OpNav pass coming up that we do not want venting during. The MET of that time frame is day 8, 0 hours, 40 minutes, to day 8, 2 hours, 0 minutes.
Copy.
And then finally, this is a little bit of a contingency information for you, but if you were to lose comm before, during, or after this burn, we've got a couple of burn plan pointers for you. If for some reason the nominal slot 4 burn plan does not converge during any of the pre-burn targeting, we want you to use ground targets. And after the RTC2 burn, if PCL and the RTC3 targeting does not converge, we've put a burn plan called Recovery 1 into slot 5. That removes a constraint on EI, and it should ensure convergence.
Copy all.
That is everything Houston has for the burn conference. Anything for us?
Negative. We're all good up here. Thank you.
All right, we're good to go, and there's absolutely no rush, but when there's a good moment, we would love a sync on cabin config.
This is Mission Control, Houston. You're continuing to watch the activities of the Integrity astronauts on board their spacecraft. Now less than 2 hours away from reaching the midway point on their trip back from the moon. Splashdown schedule for Friday night at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Pacific Time, at a point to the southwest of San Diego in the Pacific Ocean. The USS John P. Murtha, the recovery ship, is in place, and barring some unforeseen development, will be deploying Navy helicopters and Navy divers and recovery personnel to extract the 4 astronauts from the spacecraft within an hour after splashdown, hoist them into 2 hovering Navy helicopters and fly them back to the deck of the ship, where they'll undergo extensive medical exams before they're flown back to shore and ultimately back to the Johnson Space Center here in Houston. The conference you just heard between Capcom Jackie Mahaffey and the crew, involving the specificities of the upcoming return trajectory correction burn number 2 that is scheduled at 9:53 p.m. Central Time tonight. It'll be a 9-second burn now. And this, again, fine-tunes the angle of attack and the path of Integrity's trajectory to hit the sweet spot in the corridor across the Pacific Ocean for entry interface and the high-speed return back to Earth for a parachute-assisted splashdown.
Houston, integrity TLT is about to be commanded.
Houston copies. We're ready. And Christina, we see a good solution. Thank you.
Integrity copies.
Integrity, Houston. Please check the connection for PCD 3 when able.
We're on it. And we will be calling shortly for the sync on the cabin that you requested.
Sounds great. We're just trying to pull a few more images off that PCD, so we'll watch for it to connect.